She made a fuss out of nowhere to think and said she would go to her parents, but she went to him, after which she brought him to my house when I was not there. A black day in my life. Now I will tell you how it was. It started like any other evening. I came home from work, tired but content. I picked up some groceries on the way, even grabbed her favorite chocolate, the kind she always asked for but claimed to feel guilty eating. I walked to the front door, set my keys on the counter, and the first thing I noticed was her face. She was already pacing, her arms crossed tightly against her chest like she had rehearsed something. Before I could ask what was wrong, she exploded. "You don't care about me anymore," she shouted. "When was the last time you brought me flowers? When did you even notice how I feel?" I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about? No. Stop." She held up her hand. "I don't need excuses. I need space. I'm done pretending everything's okay." I was stunned. We hadn't even argued recently. Things had felt normal, stable, even. I tried to get a word in. Tried to tell her how I'd been planning a weekend trip for us, that I'd been working overtime to cover it. But it was like talking to a wall. She was already throwing a few things into a bag. Toothbrush, charger, some clothes. "I'm going to my parents' house. I need time to think. Please don't follow me." The door slammed before I could even respond. I stood there for a few minutes, just staring at the empty hallway, as if her silhouette might still be lingering. Then I sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at the bag of groceries I dropped on the floor. It didn't make sense. There were no signs, no buildup. She had laughed at breakfast that morning. She had texted me, "I love you," just the day before. I messaged her. No reply. I called twice, straight to voicemail. By midnight, I was pacing the kitchen in the same pattern she had earlier, trying to make sense of it all. What had I missed? Was I really that blind? I told myself she was just overwhelmed, that she'd come around, that we'd talk it out like we always did. But something in my gut told me this time was different, and I had no idea just how right I was. The days that followed her sudden departure were some of the most confusing of my life. She was gone, just gone. No goodbye kiss, no real explanation, no tearful embrace at the door. Just that cold, distant statement. "I need time to think. I'm going to my parents for a while." Followed by the sound of the front door closing. I stood in the hallway for minutes, phone still in my hand, staring at the spot where her suitcase had been just moments ago. It felt like someone had hit pause on my life and forgotten to press play again. At first, I respected her decision. Maybe she really did need space. Maybe I had missed something. Some subtle sign, some accumulation of small slights. I replayed our last few weeks over and over in my head, searching for clues. Had I forgotten her birthday? No. Had I brushed off something she said? Maybe. Had I gotten too comfortable? Probably. But nothing seemed worthy of this level of drama. I waited a day before texting her. No answer. Another day. No read receipts. By the third day, I was pacing the apartment like a caged animal. I called, straight to voicemail. I messaged her friends. None of them knew anything, or so they said. Eventually, I reached out to her parents, and that's when the alarm bells started ringing. Her mother sounded nervous, said she hadn't arrived yet, claimed she might have taken a detour to clear her head, but it was her father's voice in the background, sharp and clipped. That got to me. Just tell him she doesn't want to be contacted. That wasn't how her family spoke to me. Not before. Not ever. I hung up, staring blankly at the wall, letting the silence in the room crawl over me like a cold fog. Something wasn't right. I knew her patterns. When she was upset, she got quiet, but never like this. Never total radio silence. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when she left. Not angry, not even particularly sad. Just cold, like a decision had already been made, and she was simply carrying it out. I kept telling myself to give it time, that she'd come back when she was ready, that it wasn't another man, that she just needed air. But I wasn't naive. On the 6th day, I reached out to someone I never thought I'd call, a guy I knew from college, now working in private security. We'd kept in touch loosely, birthday messages, the occasional beer, but I'd never had a reason to ask him for help. Until now. "I'm not asking you to stalk her," I said when he picked up. I need to know where she is. Please." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll see what I can do." By the next evening, he had something. "She's not at her parents'. In fact, she hasn't been there at all. She's staying in a condo downtown. Not hers. Registered to a guy named Alex K. Ring a bell?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. I already knew. Alex, the same guy she always said was just an old friend, the one from work who never meant anything, the one who apparently had meant just enough for her to lie to me and vanish into his apartment without a second thought. I felt something rupture inside me then. Not like a scream, not like an explosion. Something quieter, final, a crack that ran to the foundation of everything I thought was real. But I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't rage. I waited. And when she returned just under 2 weeks later, as if on cue, I was ready. It was a Thursday evening when I walked in and saw her at the stove, humming like nothing had happened, like she hadn't disappeared off the face of the earth, like she hadn't pretended to be with her family while living in another man's apartment. The scent of garlic and onions filled the kitchen. She looked up, smiled. "You're home early." I forced a small nod, hanging my jacket slowly, measuring every move. "I thought you needed space." I said. "I did," she replied, her voice annoyingly calm. But I realized I was overreacting. "I missed you." She reached for me, and I let her hug me, let her kiss my cheek, let her sit across from me at the dinner table and tell me about how she'd just needed to clear her head. I said nothing. I chewed slowly. I nodded at the right times. I played my part, because by then I had already installed 2 hidden cameras. Because by then I had already filed an official police notice about potential unauthorized access to my property. Because by then I knew exactly who Alex K. was, where he worked, and what kind of skeletons he kept in his closet. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need a fight. I needed evidence. She thought she was in control, that I'd just swallow the lie and thank her for coming back. But she didn't know me as well as she thought. And she definitely didn't know what I was capable of when cornered. By the 4th day after her return, the cameras caught him, entering through the side door with a key I never gave him, laughing, carrying a bottle of wine, kissing her, right there, in my house, my living room, on the couch I had bought for us with a bonus. I earned working double shifts. The couch we used to watch movies on. The couch where I once thought about proposing to her. I watched the footage that night without blinking. No pause. No rewind. Just one long, silent intake of betrayal that settled somewhere deep in my lungs. When it ended, I stood up, walked to the sink, and poured the rest of my coffee down the drain. Then I called my lawyer. It was time to make them both pay. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of rage or heartbreak. That part of me had gone on the moment I watched her kiss him on my couch. It wasn't even pain anymore. It was calculation. Something had shifted. I was no longer the boyfriend who got left behind. I was the man they underestimated. The next morning, she moved around the kitchen like a loving partner. Made eggs. Hummed to herself. Asked if I'd sleep okay. I nodded, thanked her, played along. If there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's patience. And I was done being the emotional one in this relationship. She didn't notice the extra phone in my jacket pocket. Didn't realize I'd already clipped screenshots, printed timestamps, and transferred everything to an encrypted cloud. I wasn't just angry, I was thorough. Later that day, I drove to meet my lawyer. Ethan was the kind of guy who wore custom suits and smiled like a shark that had already tasted blood. We'd met once before when I consulted him about expanding my business. Now I was here for something a little more personal. I laid it all out. The fake departure, the affair, the footage, the trespassing. I showed him the video, clean, undeniable, time-stamped. Ethan leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "She brought him into your house," he said slowly, tapping a pen against his notepad. "And you never gave him a key?" "Nope. You recorded everything? Every minute. He nodded once, slowly. Then we've got them. At the very least, we pressed trespassing charges. Civil action for emotional distress. Maybe even go after her for fraud if she was financially benefiting from you while living a lie. He paused. Do you want this to go public? I thought for a moment. Not yet. I want them to sweat first. I left his office feeling something close to peace. But I wasn't done yet. I upgraded the security system in the house. Silent notifications, real-time alerts, door sensors. She didn't notice, too caught up in her performance as a forgiving girlfriend. Every night she curled up beside me. I felt like I was lying next to a stranger, but I let her believe I still loved her. I let her lean into me, whisper apologies she didn't mean. I let her think I bought it all. And every time he returned, every time they thought they were clever, I logged it. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. It was a Friday afternoon. I'd arranged a meeting with Ethan and a local police contact he knew. We had the evidence. We had the timeline. All I needed was one more visit from Alex. One more key in the lock. And like clockwork, it happened. He arrived just after 4:30 p.m. Same leather jacket, same smug smile, same bottle of red wine. I watched it all from my phone in the office. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. Just another piece of a puzzle falling into place. 15 minutes later, the knock came. 2 officers, plain clothes, polite but firm. They didn't make a scene, didn't raise their voices. They just knocked, entered, and asked Alex to step outside for a quick word. He looked confused at first, then concerned, then quietly furious as they read in the statement and handed him the notice. Trespassing, unlawful entry, accomplice to deception on private property. Her face went pale. I stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. You did this, she hissed at me. I protected what's mine, I said flatly. Would you stop being the moment you brought him here? I can't believe you. No, I interrupted. You don't get to talk. Not today. Alex was already in the back of the squad car. She followed, screaming something about misunderstanding, about just being confused. I didn't watch them drive away. I had other things to do. I packed up her things that night. Everything. Clothes, makeup, even the cheap necklace she once claimed had sentimental value. I set it all by the door and changed the locks the next morning. Her key? I left it on the kitchen counter with a post-it. Return not accepted. Then I filed the lawsuit. The court documents would show everything. The surveillance, the police report, the emotional damages, the proof of deception. And while I didn't care about the money, I wanted one thing very clear. You don't burn down a good man's life and walk away without consequence. The media didn't catch wind. This wasn't that kind of story. But word got around our circles. Her friends stopped calling. Her family, those I once had Sunday dinners with, went silent. Even her employer, when subpoenaed to verify her claims about working late. The house was quieter than ever. Surfaced, not peaceful. I didn't want revenge. Not calm. I wanted closure. Quiet. The kind that sits heavy on your shoulders and echoes in your bones. There were no footsteps down the hall. No humming in the kitchen. No clinking of her cheap rings against my coffee mugs. Just silence, thick and sterile. She hadn't come back since the arrest. Part of me expected a text, a call, some long-winded excuse or twisted justification. But there was nothing, no apology, no denial, just absence. And, oddly, that stung more than her betrayal. I sat in the living room with my coffee, staring at the framed photo of us at the beach, back when I still believed the smiles were real. I should have thrown it out, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed the reminder, the warning. Ethan called later that day. She's been served, he said simply. Your case is solid. If it goes to court, we'll win. But there's talk of a settlement. I leaned back. Of course there is. She wants to meet. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. Tell her no. Are you sure? Positive. Let her sit with it for a while. The next few days were strange. People started asking questions, some subtle, some blunt. My sister called after hearing whispers. My best friend sent a half-joking, half-serious message. You good, man? You disappeared. I told them the truth. Not the full court filing version, but enough. Enough for them to understand that I'd been loyal to someone who treated me like a fool. Enough for them to know I was done being anyone's emotional punching bag. What surprised me most was how many people confessed to suspecting something. She always seemed distant, one said. I thought it was just stress, another admitted. Funny, isn't it? How everyone sees the cracks once the house has already collapsed. A week passed before she reached out. Please, just talk to me. One sentence. That's all she sent. No context. No apology. Just a plea. I didn't respond. Instead, I revisited the footage. Not because I needed to. I already knew the story frame by frame. But I wanted to remind myself, you're not crazy. You saw what you saw. You felt what you felt. And she lied. The messages came slowly at first. Then faster. Angrier. Desperate. I didn't plan it. You're blowing everything out of proportion. We were broken before this. Why are you being so cold? I ignored them all. I didn't know her closure. I didn't know her a conversation. The only thing I owed myself was peace. And every second she stayed away was one more brick in the wall between who I used to be and who I was becoming. Then came the visit. I heard the knock at the door before I saw her face through the peephole. No makeup. Puffy eyes. A hoodie too big for her frame. Probably mine. I didn't open it. She knocked again. Whisper my name. Please, just 5 minutes. Still, I didn't open it. She stood there for a long time. I watched from the upstairs window, hidden behind the curtain. She paced. She sat on the porch steps. She stared at the door like it owed her something. Eventually, she left. I thought it would feel good, like justice, like a win. But honestly, it just felt like grief. Not for her. For the version of myself I had to bury to survive her. The next morning, I made a decision. I packed the rest of her things, everything she hadn't taken before, and drove them to a storage facility on the edge of town. I paid 3 months in advance and sent her the code. No note, no message, no drama, just logistics. That was the day I stopped reacting and started rebuilding. I repainted the guest room, changed the curtains, donated the wine glasses she always insisted on buying even though she didn't drink wine. I even replaced the mattress. Small acts, quiet revolutions, proof that healing didn't always look like revenge. Sometimes, it looked like finally sleeping through the night. I thought after packing up her things, I'd feel some kind of triumph, like I'd crossed the finish line, left her in the dust, and could finally sprint into something better. But healing doesn't come with applause. There's no banner at the end, no crowd cheering you on. Just a long, quiet road and your own thoughts echoing back at you. The first few days without her felt like freedom with a side of vertigo. I could breathe, but I wasn't used to the air. I slept through the night, but I woke up disoriented, reaching for a body that wasn't there. Old habits die hard, even the destructive ones. I'd walk past her favorite mug in the cabinet and flinch. Catch myself playing our playlist by accident while I worked. Every little ghost of her floated through the house, like smoke I couldn't quite clear out. But I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't give in. Instead, I kept moving. I threw myself into my job like a man possessed. Longer hours. Extra projects. Anything to stay distracted. My co-workers noticed. They didn't ask questions, but they gave me space. And I needed that more than sympathy. Outside of work, I started small. Cleaned the garage. Fixed that creaky step on the porch. Replaced the bulb in the hallway that had been dead for months. Funny how grief makes you productive. I even started going to the gym again. I'd always been in decent shape, but the past year had worn me down. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Now I lifted more, ran harder, pushed until my muscles burned and my lungs begged for air. There was something therapeutic about it, like I was punishing the weak version of myself into extinction. And then came the text again. This time, they weren't desperate. They were polished, measured. I hope you're well. I just want to say thank you for everything. You didn't deserve any of it. I stared at those words for a long time, not because I was tempted to reply, but because I realized something important. She finally understood what she lost. And I didn't care. The power in that hit me harder than anything she ever said. A week later, I ran into her friend, Ashley, I think her name was, at the grocery store. We were both reaching for the same loaf of bread and locked eyes awkwardly. She gave me a soft smile. Hey, you look better. I raised an eyebrow. Better? You know, healthier, lighter, like you finally shook something off. I half laughed. You mean like a parasite? Her smile tightened. She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say this, but she talks about you. A lot. Says she made a mistake. She made a choice, I said calmly. A very clear one. Ashley nodded. You're not wrong. I just thought you should know. I thanked her and walked away without looking back. I didn't need secondhand guilt. I had my own peace to protect now. Later that night, I sat on the back porch with beer, watching the sky turn from orange to deep indigo. There was a stillness to evenings now. No arguments. No tension. Just a rustle of wind through the trees and the occasional bark from a neighbor's dog. And for the first time in months, I realized I wasn't lonely. I was alone, and there's a difference. Loneliness is craving what's missing. Being alone is learning you don't need it. I wasn't rushing to date again. I didn't download the apps or flirt with strangers. I wasn't ready. But I was healing. One small, solid step at a time. I started journaling. Something the old me would have rolled his eyes at. But putting thoughts on paper made them real. It helped sort the chaos in my head. Reminded me of the progress I was making. The man she walked out on, the one she thought was too boring, too routine, too safe. He was gone now. In his place stood someone who had survived the quiet violence of betrayal. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Someone rebuilding. I wasn't expecting anyone. Someone better. I rarely did. And I wasn't done yet. My circle had shrunk to essentials. Co-workers, a gym buddy, the guy at the coffee shop who knew my order before I said a word. So the knock startled me more than it should have. I opened the door, and there she was. Same soft features. Same eyes I used to memorize. But something was different. The way she held herself. Less confident. Less sure. She looked smaller. Hi, she said, barely above a whisper. I leaned against the doorframe. Did you get lost? She flinched. I was in the neighborhood. Of course you were. For a few seconds, we just stood there in silence. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. I've been thinking about you, she said finally. I figured. I folded my arms. Took you long enough. She nodded, looking down at her shoes. I know I don't deserve it. Any of it. Your time. Your kindness. Even this conversation. You're right. She looked up quickly, eyes searching my face for something. Maybe softness. Maybe weakness. She didn't find either. I just needed to say it. That I'm sorry. For everything. The apology was real. I could see it in her eyes. But it didn't land like she thought it would. It didn't make me want to reach out. Or forgive. Or forget. I didn't hate her. I didn't feel anything strong enough for that anymore. That's what scared her, I think. She tried again. You were good to me. Better than I deserved. And you made sure to prove that. I was stupid. No, I said quietly. You were selfish. There's a difference. I could see the tears forming, but I didn't move. Didn't reach for her. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. She swallowed hard. Do you hate me? No, I don't. But I'm done with you. A pause. Are you seeing someone? I shook my head. Not yet. But when I do, it'll be someone who doesn't confuse kindness for weakness. Her face crumbled at that, and for a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I should go, she murmured. I think that's wise. She turned and walked away slowly, like the weight of what she lost had finally settled on her shoulders. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment, letting out a slow, steady breath. I thought I'd feel triumph. I didn't. I just felt clean. Later that week, I went back to the same cafe we used to frequent. Not out of nostalgia, just convenience. The waitress, a woman I barely knew beyond small smiles and quick service, noticed me staring out the window. "Rough week?" she asked, placing the coffee down. "More like a closing chapter." She gave a kind smile. "Those can be the best kind." I smiled back. "Yeah, I think this one was overdue." She lingered a moment longer. "Well, here's the better stories ahead." That night, I slept without tossing, without dreams, without regret. It was the first time in years that peace didn't feel temporary. It felt earned. I spent the next few days in a state of controlled silence. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. The rage had burned itself out and left something colder in its place. Something sharper. I went to work like normal, ate like normal, slept more or less. But all the while I was planning. She thought I didn't know, that I was just some blind fool willing to take her back no matter what. And maybe once I would have, maybe a month ago, I would have taken her in my arms the second she returned and told her I was just glad she came home. But not anymore. Now, every word she said felt rehearsed. Every smile was a mask. I played along. Let her kiss my cheek in the morning. Let her sit beside me on the couch like old times. She cooked, cleaned, laughed, even talked about planning a weekend getaway together. And I smiled, nodded, pretended like I was grateful for the sudden return of the woman I once loved. But I was just watching. The camera I'd installed in the living room was well hidden, tucked inside a bookshelf speaker she never touched. The second one, above the hallway coat rack, was even more subtle, a motion-triggered lens behind a decorative vent cover. It gave me a perfect view of the front door. And sure enough, it paid off. Thursday night. I came home a bit later than usual. I deliberately told her I had a late client dinner, just to see what she'd do. She texted me around 6 p.m. "Don't worry, I'll just order takeout and relax tonight. Love you." But the camera said otherwise. At 7:43, she opened the door, not to the pizza delivery guy, to him, the same man I'd seen in that grainy photo a week earlier. Tall, lean, confident walk like he owned the place. She let him in like it was nothing. No hesitation. No guilt. They kissed in the doorway. Just kissed, like this was normal. Like he'd been here 100 times before. I watched the footage alone in my office, the video playing on repeat while I sat motionless in my chair. I didn't even blink. I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. She lied again. After everything. She came back to my home, my table, my bed, and she brought him into it too. She smiled in my face while she slept with someone else in the same walls I'd built for us. The part that hit me the hardest wasn't betrayal. It was how easily she did it. How natural she looked as she poured him a glass of wine and sat with him on our couch. The same couch where we'd once talked about raising a family. They laughed at some movie. I don't even remember which one. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that they were comfortable. Too comfortable. She didn't even lock the door after he left, like she had nothing to hide, like she thought I'd never know, like I was too stupid to see the truth staring me in the face. The next morning, I said nothing, made her coffee like always, kissed her goodbye at the door. She smiled and said, "You're so good to me. I'm glad I came back." I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked to the nearest police station. Filing the complaint wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. The officer was polite, a bit surprised, and very methodical. I handed over the footage, explained that the property was legally mine, that she wasn't a tenant, that I had documentation showing when she'd left, and the messages where she claimed to be somewhere else. It was enough to file for trespassing, enough to pursue a case. But I didn't stop there. I called my lawyer, not the one who handled contracts for my cafe, the other one, the one I'd only used once before, years ago, when a former partner tried to steal from the business. She was sharp, thorough, and had a talent for cutting through lies like a scalpel. When I showed her the footage and explained everything, she leaned back in her chair and whistled. "You're either the most patient man alive," she said, "or the coldest." "Maybe a bit of both," I replied. She helped me draft a formal eviction notice under the legal terms of unauthorized residency and a cease and desist for him For entering private property without consent, the documents were ready within 48 hours. That night, I came home early again. She was cooking pasta, humming to herself like everything was fine. "Smells great," I said. She turned, beaming. "I thought I'd surprise you tonight." I nodded and set the papers on the kitchen table. Her smile faded. "What's this?" she asked, already knowing. "Legal clarity," I said. "I know about him. I've known for a while." She went pale. "Wait, I can explain." "I don't want your explanation." Her mouth opened, but I cut her off again. "Calm. Steady. You came back to my house pretending to be someone else. You said you needed space. You lied, and then you brought him here, into this house. You crossed every line." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. "I gave you everything," I said. "My trust, my time, my loyalty. You chose to throw it away." She reached for me like that might fix things. "Please don't do this." I stepped back. "It's already done. You have 48 hours to leave." She cried, tried to say it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she was confused, that he pressured her, that she still loved me. But I didn't listen anymore. I wasn't angry. I was free. I went upstairs, locked the office door, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without checking the cameras, because I already knew how the story ended, and I was finally ready to write a new one. I didn't move out right away. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But something inside me needed confirmation, not just her betrayal. I already had that in high definition, complete with dates and timestamps. What I needed was a final moment of clarity, something to kill the last flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, all of this had been a mistake. So I stayed for a few more days. I barely spoke, ate dinner in silence, slept on the couch. She didn't ask why. That told me everything. She thought she had won. Thought I had accepted her back without a fight, without questions. Maybe she figured I was too broken to resist anymore. Or maybe she was just that arrogant. The cameras I'd installed had already done their job. 2 weeks' worth of footage showed the truth. She hadn't just gone to think. She'd gone to another man's arms. And worse, she'd brought him into mine. Every time I watched him walk to the front door, her laughing at something he said, him carrying a bottle of wine or some takeout, I felt less and less like a fool and more like a man preparing for war. I knew his name now, his face, where he worked. I knew enough to end him if I wanted to, but I didn't. That would have made him important. He wasn't. He was just a symptom of something far worse. Her. She came home one night while I was going through bank records. I wasn't trying to catch her stealing. I was making sure she didn't. She didn't notice the papers spread out across the table. Instead, she dropped her purse, kicked off her heels, and flopped onto the couch like nothing was wrong. "Hey," she said, scrolling through her phone. "How was your day?" I looked up at her. Really looked. There was no remorse, no anxiety, just routine. Like she had mentally erased the past few weeks and pasted over them with a version of reality that made her feel comfortable again. "It was fine," I said. "Yours?" She shrugged. "Busy. Tanya from work kept messing up the inventory. I swear, I have to do everything myself." I studied her face. She had gotten good at this, living 2 lives at once. But the cracks were still there. Little things. The way she bit the inside of her cheek when she lied. The way she tapped her nail on the counter while waiting for me to believe her. I said nothing, just nodded, and went back to the documents. The next morning, I went to see my lawyer. I didn't ask for advice. I gave instructions. He read through the footage, the texts, the bank transfers. When he looked up, his expression said it all. She was done. We filed. Later that week, she came home to find me packing. "Wait, what are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. Just zipped up the suitcase and turned to her. "You lied," I said. "You brought him into my home. You disrespected everything we built." Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. Footage played from the camera hidden behind the bookshelf. Her walking in hand with him, both laughing. him pressing her against the wall, her not resisting. She gasped, You spied on me? No, I said calmly. I protected myself. Something you clearly never considered. The silence in the room was thick. She didn't deny it, didn't cry, just stare at the screen like it was some kind of horror film, and she couldn't decide whether to be afraid or ashamed. I thought we were starting over, she finally whispered. No, I said, hoisting the suitcase. You thought I'd never find out. I left without another word. I stayed with a friend for a few days, cleared my head, ate real food, slept through the night for the first time in months. And then, when I was ready, I called her to schedule the pickup. I boxed your things. I told her. They're in the garage. Come alone. You have 1 hour. She showed up late. Of course. Makeup perfect. Dressed like she was trying to impress someone. Maybe me. Maybe him. Maybe herself. I didn't let her inside. I stood at the door, arms crossed. I'm sorry, she said, eyes glassy. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking I'd forgive you. Again. Tears started down her cheeks. Real ones this time. I miss us. There is no us. Not anymore. She looked around the house. Our house. Like she was only now realizing it was over. You're really doing this? She asked, her voice breaking. I didn't move out right away. She left with her boxes. God knows I closed the door, but something inside me needed confirmation. Letting out the breath I didn't know I was holding. It was I already had that in high definition. Something else was just complete with dates and timestamps. What I needed was a final moment of clarity. Something to kill the last flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, all of this had been a mistake. So I stayed for a few more days. I barely spoke, ate dinner in silence, slept on the couch. She didn't ask why. That told me everything. She thought she had won. Thought I had accepted her back without a fight, without questions. Maybe she figured I was too broken to resist anymore. Or maybe she was just that arrogant. The cameras I'd installed had already done their job. 2 weeks' worth of footage showed the truth. She hadn't just gone to think. She'd gone to another man's arms. And worse, she'd brought him into mine. Every time I watched him walk to the front door, her laughing at something he said, him carrying a bottle of wine or some takeout, I felt less and less like a fool and more like a man preparing for war. I knew his name now, his face, where he worked. I knew enough to end him if I wanted to, but I didn't. That would have made him important. He wasn't. He was just a symptom of something far worse. Her. She came home one night while I was going through bank records. I wasn't trying to catch her stealing. I was making sure she didn't. She didn't notice the papers spread out across the table. Instead, she dropped her purse, kicked off her heels, and flopped onto the couch like nothing was wrong. Hey, she said, scrolling through her phone. How was your day? I looked up at her. Really looked. There was no remorse, no anxiety, just routine. Like she had mentally erased the past few weeks and pasted over them with a version of reality that made her feel comfortable again. It was fine, I said. Yours. She shrugged. Busy. Tanya from work kept messing up the inventory. I swear, I have to do everything myself. I studied her face. She had gotten good at this, living 2 lives at once. But the cracks were still there. Little things. The way she bit the inside of her cheek when she lied. The way she tapped her nail on the counter while waiting for me to believe her. I said nothing, just nodded, and went back to the documents. The next morning, I went to see my lawyer. I didn't ask for advice. I gave instructions. He read through the footage, the texts, the bank transfers. When he looked up, his expression said it all. She was done. We filed. Later that week, she came home to find me packing. Wait, what are you doing? I didn't answer right away. Just zipped up the suitcase and turned to her. You lied, I said. You brought him into my home. You disrespected everything we built. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. Footage played from the camera hidden behind the bookshelf. Her walking in hand with him, both laughing. Him pressing her against the wall. Her not resisting. She gasped, You spied on me? No, I said calmly. I protected myself. Something you clearly never considered. The silence in the room was thick. She didn't deny it. Didn't cry. Just stare at the screen like it was some kind of horror film, and she couldn't decide whether to be afraid or ashamed. "I thought we were starting over," she finally whispered. "No," I said, hoisting the suitcase. "You thought I'd never find out." I left without another word. I stayed with a friend for a few days. Cleared my head. Ate real food. Slept through the night for the first time in months. And then, when I was ready, I called her to schedule the pickup. "I boxed your things," I told her. "They're in the garage. Come alone. You have 1 hour." She showed up late. Of course. Makeup perfect. Dressed like she was trying to impress someone. Maybe me. Maybe him. Maybe herself. I didn't let her inside. I stood at the door, arms crossed. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes glassy. "I don't know what I was thinking." "You were thinking I'd forgive you." Again. Tears started down her cheeks. Real ones this time. "I miss us." "There is no us." "Not anymore." She looked around the house. Our house. Like she was only now realizing it was over. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I already did." She left with her boxes. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting out the breath I didn't know I was holding. It was over, but something else was just beginning. 3 months had passed. Funny how time plays tricks on the heart. How something that once made you ache with every breath eventually fades into background noise, like a scar that still tingles when the weather changes but no longer bleeds. She tried reaching out 5 times in total. Once through a mutual friend, twice by email, once from a new number, and the last through a handwritten letter I found shoved in my mailbox one quiet Sunday morning. I didn't read any of them. There was no point. Some things, once broken, don't need gluing back together. They need to stay broken, untouched, preserved, like an artifact from a life I no longer lived. I'd moved on, not to someone else. Just forward, step by step. The house was different now. Brighter somehow. Not because I repainted or bought new furniture. Just because she wasn't there. The tension, the walking on eggshells, the suspicion, it had all left with her. For the first time in a long while, I felt like the space around me actually belonged to me. I got a dog. A big, goofy mutt from the shelter. He didn't care about who I was or what I'd been through. He just wanted walks and belly rubs and to sleep at my feet. We understood each other perfectly. One evening, I walked past my old favorite coffee shop and saw her through the window. She wasn't alone. The guy from my living room was with her. They were sitting close. She laughed at something he said and rested her hand lightly on his knee, the way she used to do with me. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. Either way, I kept walking. No hate, no anger. Just a quiet exhale, like closing a book you never really finished and finally putting it back on the shelf. 2 weeks later, I got the final piece of closure I didn't know I needed. A message from her sister. "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I thought you should know." She told the family what happened. She regrets it. Deeply. She says losing you was the worst thing she's ever done. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Regret doesn't undo action. Guilt isn't a key that opens a locked door. I'd learned something valuable through all this, not just about love, but about myself, about dignity, boundaries, and the silent power of walking away. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is not fight to fix what's broken. Sometimes it's knowing when to stop bleeding for someone who never tried to stop the knife. That night, I sat on the back porch with my dog beside me, listening to the city hum in the distance. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt free, and that was enough.